You can listen to The Professional Left on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for August 24th, 2018. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where I had no knowledge of the professional left and everything is my wife's fault. It's the Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal.
Going to work for Duncan Hunter, and it's not going to work for you.
No. I just, before our podcast started, literally moments before, someone shot me a note saying that my recitation of all the Republicans who were doing impeachment thingies back in the 90s, Duncan Hunter's not old enough to possibly have been in on that. And therefore, my quote
yes,
must
he
be
is,
wrong.
it turns out, right?
Now, my quote is not something I made up. It's from a PBS Kwame Homan interview from 1998 or 1999, the link for which is now gone.
Okay, but Duncan Hunter is also his dad who held that seat before him.
Yes, indeed.
So it could be Duncan Hunter Sr.
It certainly could. So the whole family basically are fucked. But whoever, I think you're probably right. I think it was probably his dad. But
rolling back and forth, the bus right over your wife like that is scummy. And I want to point out, this is something you can see over and over again. We notice this with, and I'm not trying to compare tax evasion to shooting someone. I realize there is white collar crime and then there's murder, and there is a difference. But you notice in the shootings that people who have a history of domestic violence and treating women like dirt, the shooters often have that in their background. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
These guys, these white-collar criminals, these mob people in the Trump White House and in the Republican Party in general treat women like shit. And they treat women like shit in policy and in their personal lives. Women are property. And that's it just, I tweeted this just a few minutes ago myself, that I refute the idea that this whole thing about Trump isn't about sex and that his sex life was already baked into the cake when the election happened. And so never mind about the moral implications of his behavior, because the Women's March proved that his behavior was atrocious to all of us.
Yes, it was.
His behavior toward women. He cheated on his wife more than once. His current wife, not just the other two wives. He's cheated on all of them. But his current wife, he's cheated on multiple times with multiple women and paid them off with hush money. And what makes the atrocious behavior, which Bill Clinton's behavior was atrocious too, but what makes it an impeachable crime is the tax evasion and the money and using funds that are earmarked for other things or are being written off your taxes.
Yeah.
Rachel Maddow was very funny last night with Lawrence on Thursday night. We're recording on Friday. She said, it's you can't write off the paying off of a girlfriend is the most fun day in tax law school.
Well, and there's there's the tax implication of it.
Yeah.
And then there's the campaign finance implication.
Right.
You cannot do this. It is illegal for you to use this money for this purpose in campaigns, period. It doesn't matter where it comes from. First of all, you far exceeded your campaign limit. Secondly, you didn't report it. People screw up their campaign contributions all the time. They exceed the limit, or they write or their check is post-dated, or whatever.
They file it late, or whatever, and you pay a fine. And when it's an innocent mistake, or I used the wrong credit card to buy lunch that day. That's the campaign credit card. I need to reimburse the campaign for that. And you might pay a fine for that, and that does happen. And there are people in politics, surprise, surprise, who do bake that into the cake, where they will overspend and pay the fine because they want to win that primary. That's just breaking the rules.
But this case, this
isn't about that.
This is hush money that was filtered through a second and then a third party and then a shell corporation specifically designed to cover up the fact that you were buying someone's silence, because having them speak aloud of your activities would destroy your ability to run for president of the United States and win. That's the purpose of it. It was not extra money for a campaign ad. It was hush money to a woman you were having an affair with to shut her mouth so you could win. And that is illegal.
That is illegal. Book. And Donald Trump, surprise, surprise, is an illegitimate president as a result and should resign.
Well, this is sort of the alpha version of the tribe that rubs shit in its hair. This is, for those of you who are unfamiliar with this term, which is probably most of you, it's a term I coined a long, long time ago about the tribe of Republicans who are socially and mentally isolated from every other human being, who only interact with each other and who fall into these weird, disgusting, depraved habits. And I liken that to people who rub shit in their hair and make fancy designs out of it and put 3-masted schooners in their hair made of poop. And they impress the shit out of each other with their incredibly complex designs and architecture. And then they walk out in public and people are horrified by the smell, by the look, by the holy shit, what the hell's wrong with you? Donald Trump simply was raised in a mobster universe.
Yeah.
He does not have a moral compass. And he's having you just watched last night the Mirror, Mirror Star Trek.
Yes. I'm glad you're bringing that up so early in the podcast.
Thank you.
The bearded Spock alternative universe where people are evil and murder to become captain. There's assassinations and genocide. I mean, the Enterprise is about to commit genocide of a planet, Because
the Empire's will must be obeyed.
Right.
And there's this one little bit where after everything's been set right again, this is a spoiler alert for a 50-year-old science fiction. But they all get everything's right. And how did you catch our mirror opposites so quickly? How did you figure it out so fast? And Spock says, obviously, that it's easier for a barbarian to pretend to be a civilized man to pretend to be a barbarian than it is for a barbarian to pretend to be civilized.
Right.
It is impossible for Donald Trump to pretend to be civilized.
Right.
He doesn't know what it means. He's a thug. He's a liar. He's a scumbag. He's a lech. He cheats on his wife. He rips off his contractors. He's a filthy, disgusting piece of shit. And he doesn't know how to pretend to be anything other than that. So he has people around him who sort of spray paint respectability over him, just like they've been doing with the whole Republican Party for decades. The Republican Party is Donald Trump. They are wretched, ignorant, racist, awful people. And the entire purpose of the media has been to spray paint a thin veneer of respectability over this pile of shit so they can win elections and cut their taxes, and we can have a two-party system where we pretend that everything is both sides' problem. Donald Trump simply does not have the rudimentary ability to fake being a decent human being. He doesn't know how to do it. He knows how to bribe people. He knows how to threaten them, and he knows how to bully them, and he knows how to whine and cry and crawl under a desk when things don't go his way and throw a tantrum. And that's what the Republican Party is now noticing, that they can't, no amount of perfume is going to make this guy not be a mobster and not announce to the whole world, sure, I have a lot of criminal friends. A lot of my friends got flipped on. It happens to everybody. Everybody I know.
It should be illegal. He said flipping should be illegal. Yes.
I didn't flip you. You tell your story and then you get your sentence cut. And it's just this whole thing. Oh, yeah, I know lots of people that do that. What he actually said was, everyone I know is a criminal. I only associate with scumbag mobsters and scumbag wannabe mobsters. This is my vocabulary. This is my understanding of morality. And I just assumed, like another Star Trek episode, a piece of the action, if you will, that everything was like this. The whole world is run like one big mob family. And that, of course, the Justice Department's corrupt because all lawyers are corrupt, because my lawyer is corrupt. And, of course, everyone's lying and there's a big conspiracy against me because that's what I see on Fox News every day. Yeah. And he landed in a job where nothing he believes to be true is true.
Well, and that's the lesson from Mirror, Mirror that I wanted to bring up, too, which is that moment where good Captain Kirk is talking to evil Spock. And he's got 2 minutes to get on the transporter, and he's going to say his piece. And his piece is, how long does your empire actually have? What do you have left in the timeline? And Spock knows exactly. He's got 240 years left, and then it's going to be overthrown. And he said, well, why wait? Why are you, since you know inevitably that the empire, the evil empire that you work for is temporary.
Is doomed.
And is doomed to failure. Why not jumpstart that and move forward and find a reason not to commit genocide and make it stick, And he is actually suggesting a kind of suicide. He's suggesting to evil Spock that he go as soon as this transporter thing is done and kill the captain.
Yes,
tells him how to do it.
Yep.
And it's not subtle. Kill the captain, become captain of the Enterprise, and change history. Make things better. Make the world, make the universe a better place.
He doesn't appeal to his emotions.
Nope.
He appeals to his logic.
Right.
It is illogical to waste this amount of time and effort and resources and lives on a futile, doomed empire.
And that's what Mitch McConnell does not appreciate. He does not. He is going to dig in his heels. And his silence this week when they were asking him about, the Cohen case and just keep walking and don't talk, because that is the most politically expedient thing to do. You don't make Trump mad, and you don't you don't interfere at all with the bubble in which the base has inserted itself. To not know this, to be outraged about the murder of an Iowa white girl, that's where they're at. And so we're not going to interfere with any of that. We're going to try to accumulate and hold on to as much power as we can. And if that means the Senate by one vote, so be it.
And that's the flaw in appealing to someone's logic.
In the Republican Party, yes.
Right.
Yes.
They're not rational actors.
Right.
They are in a sense, because their rational assessment, this is absolutely true. This is true of all the never Trumpers, all these very clever men and women who certainly knew that the Republican Party was a racist dung heap for decades and made their peace with it, made a fortune off of exploiting those people and telling them that they were right, they were patriotic, and they were true blue, and we liberals were awful, knowing every fucking inch of the way that what they were doing was morally degenerate, morally unacceptable. But they kept cashing that check right up until the party flipped and all that shit came out in the open. And suddenly they're all selling books about how I didn't know the Republican Party was this, Republican Party that. Of course you did. Yeah. But like every other day trader who traded just before the economy crashed, you thought you could get out in time. You thought, I'm going to make my fucking money. But remember the motto, the motto of Wall Street before the crash?
I'll be gone, you'll be gone.
I'll be gone, you'll be gone. What the fuck does it matter if this is all trash? What the fuck does it matter if we're lying? What the fuck does it matter if we have corrupted the regulatory agencies so they will turn around and rate our dog shit as AAA? It doesn't matter. None of this matters, because I will be gone on a fucking island with a yacht by the time it all comes crashing down. I'll be out. And everyone else, screw them.
Yeah.
Not my problem.
Yeah.
That is the mentality the Republican Party has been operating under, as if they had centuries.
Yeah.
As if this was going to go on for centuries.
Our whole lifetime.
Sure. We can just keep fucking these people over and keep blaming all of our disasters on liberals and keep counting on the media.
And brown people.
Yeah, on brown people and women and gays and Mexicans and all unions, all the bad guys. We can keep blaming all of our disasters on those people for centuries. This is a never-ending source of renewable energy. And no matter what we do, once the shit hits the fan and Democrats take over, we will hunker down, sabotage them, attack them, do exactly what we did with Barack Obama. Cut his legs out from under him, and the media will go along with it, because the media depends on a two-sided story for its business model. The media, we have them by the balls. Chuck Todd cannot say, "Oh, farty Chuck." Old farty Chuck Todd cannot say the Republican Party is out of its fucking mind and that's why the country's broken, because that's the day he gets called in to his boss's office and gets handed his walking papers.
Yep.
So the Republican Party just thought this would go on forever.
Yeah.
No matter how badly we fuck up, we can lie us into the wrong war, we can sleep through a hurricane, we can sleep through a terrorist attack. None of it matters. As long as we keep our base, pig ignorant and angry and bigoted enough to keep voting for people who obviously hate them and are fucking them up into office over and over again. It doesn't matter from the minority. From the minority, we sabotage everything. In the majority, we cut taxes. We win either way.
And that brings us to class. That brings us to our sponsor this week, once again.
It doesn't it, Blue Gal?
Mary Magdalene. This week was a month of Watergate hearings compressed into a single biscuit. So now more than ever, you and your Republican friends will want to start booking a Mary Magdalene session. Mary Magdalene will turn your social media profile from MAGA Trump train idiot into independent constitutional conservative who never liked the tweeting idiot, as painlessly as if Morning Joe did it himself. Mary Magdalene, go and sin no more. Until the next time. And that's why we burn the lifeboats. And Drift Class, I really want to thank you for that post that you did this week that said, this is why the professional left believes burn the lifeboats, no rebranding. We've seen it before. We've watched them do it. The tremendous amount of money behind rebranding the Republican Party into something that idiots can vote for again and have the Bush off machine and forget about the past. We've seen it so many times just this week that memory is the liberal superpower, and that a requirement for being a conservative is a loss of memory.
Right.
It's easy. I know it's such low-hanging fruit to bring up Tomi Lahren. I know that, but she's the perfect example of how. Can you imagine anyone treating Michelle Obama the way people are treating Melania Trump? On Fox, she said this.
You believe it?
On Fox.
Can you believe it? What a shame. God, could anyone here imagine what it would be like if we treated...
Steve Doocy, can you even imagine anyone saying anything bad about Michelle Obama ever?
I just sat there staring at this going, wow. And here's the thing. Somewhere beyond that little tiny little bird that flops around in her head and tells her what to say, somewhere beyond that, between her mouth and the camera and the broadcast booth and the satellite, there are at least 10 people who know that that's a lie, who know it's a lie.
Right.
They participated in it. Their hands are as bloody as anybody's. So this is not a matter of misunderstanding. This is a matter of telling the meatheads the lie they want to hear. Because I guarantee you, if Tomi Lahren tells them 3 times nobody ever said anything bad about Michelle Obama, every one of your crazy Uncle Liberty friends and family will forget anything ever happened. The Barack Obama was even president. All I know is he was a good man, didn't do a very good job. He tried to come after my guns. We gave him a shot. He fucked up. What do you expect? He had no experience.
Janine Pirro said, I sucked it up during the Obama administration. I don't understand why these liberals want to get rid of Trump. You just suck it up while he's elected. That's what you got to do.
And you can't reason. This is, I did have a little exchange, not exchange. I just say things on Twitter, and 9 times out of 10, Ron Fournier never answers me, but because he blocks me. But occasionally I step into his timeline. I find out who he's talking to and talk to them. And they're people who are just, they're sick and tired of all of the back and forth and the boast and the nonsense, but they don't understand why it has to be that the left has to do all the bridge building.
Yeah.
Sure, we have to build bridges. But why does the left have to do it? And I felt very, very moved to say, first of all, your construction of the anti-Trumpers versus the Trump supporters is bullshit. What you meant to say was Republicans versus Democrats.
Right.
Because that's a very clear definition, because it's not these amorphous groups. They both have very clear political identities that go back a very long ways. Secondly, we tried this experiment already. It is just, I just feel like slapping people. Don't you remember the Obama administration? Black guy, real popular, president for 8 years. His presidency ended less than 2 years ago. Don't you remember any of this shit? And I guarantee you they don't. They don't remember any of this shit because they are fucking farm animals. They are livestock at this point, and they did it to themselves. These are people who did it to themselves. And so people who wring their hands and wish for a rational, thoughtful president who could bring the country together, you had that. And at that moment, I really do want to just sit with that person for 2 minutes and not yell at them, not scream at them, but ask them, don't you remember Barack? And see the little light dawn behind their eyes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. And ask them, how did you forget that?
Yep.
And the answer is going to be, well, I listened to Ron Fournier. I listened to Matthew Dowd. And the reason I bring good old Ron up is because this week he made his triumphant reappearance on the national stage. He was brought back. Ron Fournier, you might remember, America's sad clown of centrism, one of the most ridiculous human beings ever to take pen to paper, a guy who spent the entire 2016 campaign season literally, and I'm not exaggerating, literally doing nothing but squatting on various panels going, both sides, the corrupt duopoly, both sides. That was all he fucking said. And then, of course, it turned out it wasn't both sides. It was one side, and the bad guys won, and everything went to shit. And Ron Fournier then moved to Detroit and got out of national politics. Great. Go away, Ron. Go fucking far away. You have a lovely book about your autistic son. I respect that a great deal. Go do that. That's a great cause. Just go away. Go away. But he couldn't do it. He just couldn't do it. So the Washington Post, this is the first time Ron Fournier has ever been syndicated in the Washington Post, which means he's one up on me. I've never been syndicated in the Washington Post. What did they bring him back to tell us about? The fact that November 6th could be, Blue Gal, Independence Day.
You mean independent?
I do. He means that November 6th, and he admits that for a long time.
Excuse me, dear class. I think we ought to let our listeners say it together because they love doing that, I'm an independent.
I'm an independent. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure you
Didn't mean to interrupt you.
And he acknowledges that for a long time he railed against the Republican-Democrat duopoly. He's trying to bring the word duopoly back. It's not coming back, Ron.
Lord.
And looked for the independent white knight that would put both parties out of business, but that's not going to work. However, he's still convinced that the problem is the two major parties. The corruption of the two major parties are the real problem. And eventually, if we just find enough races where independents can break the duopoly, we can radically recenter American politics. And of course,
Drift Cluster, I want to say one thing, not in defense of Ron Fournier, but in defense of a sense that that there have been Democrats who have engaged in campaign finance malfeasance.
Sure.
And this is it. Whataboutism and both-siderism is their only defense at this point. And they're all jumping in that lake of Democrats do it too. Everybody does it. It isn't a crime, even though it has a 5-year sentence attached to it. And the judge seems to think it's a crime. I mean, that's the interesting thing, right? It's not a real crime. It's fake. And they're all jumping into that pot. The two things that accompany those kind of crimes are unlimited campaign finance with with Citizens United. Let's get rid of that. And
I with you there.
And gerrymandering.
Yep. And
candidates that are in this is what Duncan Hunter's, he's in a R+14 district or something like that. It's ridiculous. He knows he can get away with anything because he's going to get reelected no matter what. He hasn't stopped running yet. He is still running for reelection in November. Because fuck this, I'm probably going to win.
He's still on the ballot. I mean, he's technically out, but he's not out.
Yeah. So
and he knows. Here's what he knows, Blue Gal, that you and I don't know is that this is all part of a plot by the mainstream media and the liberal conspiracy and the deep state.
And the deep state, yes, just like Trump. He's exactly like Trump, right?
Well, one thing that an alert reader would notice if you read Ron Fournier's column in the Washington Post is that he did not quit Detroit or politics to go to Detroit entirely.
I thought he was going to do that.
Well, he did, but he didn't go to plant flowers or cover City Hall. He actually is a spokesman for a group called. He's a FLAC. He's the PR. He's got himself a PR company, and one of his clients is a group called Unite American Institute, and. The Unite American Institute is the study which Ron Fournier cites in his article about the exciting possible future of independence in politics. He does mention that they pay him, but the Washington Post pulled him out of retirement to write an advertorial for the political PAC for which he now runs PR.
Oh my gosh!
That's what they did. Now, of course, once you get a column in the Washington Post. the next logical step is, of course, they invited him on to Morning Joe.
Yeah, sure. To talk about his great article in the Washington Post, right?
Tell us more about this, Ron Fournier. You've got some great ideas, Ron Fournier. Tell us more about this, Ron Fournier, because Joe Scarborough is a columnist in the Washington Post. And then you realize, as some of us realized many, 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 many years ago, this is just a puppet show.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is just I'm intense. I'm less and less interested in what Ron Fournier says on any given day. I'm deeply interested in the machinery behind what moves, what picks Ron Fournier up and puts him in the Washington Post. What is the mechanism? What is the corrupt mechanism that made Joe Scarborough a legitimate political voice? What gave him a show and gave him a column? That machinery is the enemy. Because once that machinery, if you jam something into that machinery and stop it from running, suddenly everything gets very interesting.
Yep.
Because suddenly no one cares about the center. There's no one there to defend this nonsense notion that there's a vast number of independents out there and that centrism is the new thing. Suddenly you actually have to square off between people on the left who were right and people on the right who were wrong. Have a straight up fist fight, which we will win every time. But this was the week when, for whatever fucking reason, the Washington Post decided that the one person America had not heard from in long enough was Ron Fournier.
Yep.
So I got at least one email from a respected person who has a professional byline person who said, hey, I was going to write this guy up, but I figured you'd do it. So, so I did.
Another puppet show instance this week was on CNN last night, where Poppy Harlow actually turned to Rob Astorino, who is an advisor to the Trump 2020 campaign.
I've never heard of it, but I take your point. Yes.
He's New York County politics crook. I mean, whatever. But he was making the argument, and there was some woman from the Obama White House on the other side, because this is how they do it. And they were asking him, Poppy Harlow was asking Rob Astorino about Paul Manafort. Well, Paul Manafort's a good guy. He did a bad thing, and he should go to jail for it, but he's a good guy. And let me translate Donald Trump for you. What he was saying was, he's worked for me. He's a good guy. He should have added, he's done a bad thing and should go to jail for it. But he didn't say that. And Poppy Harlow is just saying, I don't have any friends that have committed tax felonies that I think are good people, Yeah. And finally she said, and I'm going to quote this, she said, I just need to know that you work on the Trump 2020 Advisory Committee, and therefore you have signed an NDA that includes a non-disclosure, non-disparagement clause. So you can't really tell me. You can't tell me whether or not you believe the president's own words he's a good guy about Paul Manafort. You can't say the honest answer one way or the other. Look, and he says, oh, no, I've known people. Sure.
Sure. We all have a lot of friends who
become convicted felons. Yeah.
Sure. Donald Trump, me, everybody. Let's just take that set of two people and make it everybody. Everybody knows
Harlow
that.
Poppy Harlow finally just said 8 counts. 8 counts. Yeah, 8 counts. And turned to the Democrat Jen Psaki and said, what's your take? And she said, and this is another quote, I think there's a really dangerous lowering of the bar here of what's acceptable.
Yeah.
Hey, you got that right.
At that, here's a fun fact. Yeah. At that exact moment, Paris Denard was cleaning out his desk.
Seriously, yeah. You might explain.
That's why he wasn't on camera.
Who he is to people.
Paris Denard is a cartoon. He's a cartoon caricature come to life. He's what would happen if you took Michael Steele and just sort of drained him of all of his energy. and made him kind of and he's still completely on board with the Republican Party. He's an African American gentleman who's been who wandered onto the RNC stage like in 2000. He borrowed his dad's suit and wandered onto the stage, and he was supposed to be the future of the Republican Party. And he talks like this. I don't understand why all the people think of the racist party. Look at me. And he's the guy you hire so you can say we have a black.
Yeah.
We're not racist.
Yeah.
See, we're not racist. Look at this guy. Look at this guy right here. And he is real comfortable with that role. So apparently he did some naughty business that he shouldn't ought to have done. Some really atrocious stuff, some sexually intimidating things on his last job that finally caught up with him, and CNN gave him the boot. Now, here's my theory. He will, like Newt Gingrich and like Hugh Hewitt, float around in the lecture circuit. He'll write a book about what a martyr he was, the cause and the greatness of Donald Trump, and the liberals are the real enemies. And then he'll pop back up someplace else. Because, there's always a place for Paris Denard and for Newt Gingrich and for Dinesh D'Souza and for Hugh Hewitt and the rest of these fucking freaks at the Republican table and in the media. And that's really important. The CNN and, to their discredit, MSNBC will look high and low to find anyone who will come on who's willing to put on a dress or put on a suit and sit and look at a camera and say Donald Trump is a great man and liberals are the problem. And they've got a whole raft of people who will do that. And there's great money to be made if you're just a soulless hack who's willing to do that, or if you actually are warped enough, if you're damaged enough as a human being to actually believe that. There's money to be made doing that, and there always will be.
Driftglass, what about Omarosa Manigault?
Oh, yeah. Where did she go? Last week, who was Omarosa Manigault who? This week is Omarosa Manigault who? She was headlined everywhere last week. Stop the presses. There's a leak. There's a tape. There's a video. This week, she ceased to exist for a while because this was the week that all of Donald Trump's friends started to go to jail and started getting their sentences. This is, as I noted in our notes, this is back to school week, which means it's immunization season for grade schoolers and high schoolers, and Alan Weisselberg, who's Donald Trump's accountant, and David Pecker, the guardian of Donald Trump's Chamber of Secrets. All of Donald Trump's circle of friends. This is exactly how mob trial works, by the way. All of his people, his lawyer, his accountant, his pals, his fixers, his button men, his douchebags, all the people that have been orbiting him for whether it was a year or 2 or 10 or 15 or 20 are all starting to feel the long arm of the law land on their shoulder. And this was the week that Michael Cohen took an 8 count and stood up in court and said, I broke the law. I committed a felony. I committed a felony to subvert the 2016 election. I used money, and I was directed to do so by Donald Trump. This has never happened before. This is a moment we really do have to stop and sort of take our breath. At no point did anyone under oath during their sentencing, during their allocution, during the explanation of the crimes they committed, ever say, I was there, the president did it, and I was there, and he told me to do it. That didn't happen. Right. This has now happened. And this is just the opening act. This is just the coda at the beginning of the opera. Paul Manafort is clearly he took an 8 count himself. There were 10 more counts that that he wasn't convicted on. He could still be retried on it because one juror decided that despite the fact that there was overwhelming evidence of his guilt, they just decided, 8's good. I'm cool with 8. Yeah. 8 is who learned from TV 20 years ago that 8 is enough, Blue Gal.
8 is enough.
8 is enough.
See.
And this is again that should have been that sent shocks through the White House. That this is how close they're getting. And now we're coming after your lawyer, and we're going to offer immunity to your accountant. Right. And we're going to offer immunity to David Pecker. And I'm never going to get tired of Pecker jokes that relate to Donald Trump.
Absolutely not.
That ran the National Enquirer, who spent a year fluffing for Donald Trump and pulling every conspiracy theory out of thin air and publishing it about Hillary Clinton, and who did Catch and Kill. And Catch and Kill is using the National Enquirer as if it were an actual journalistic outlet. Yep. They would pay someone with really damaging information about Donald Trump a lot of money, as if that were a story. For an exclusive with their story. For exclusive. Right. And they would sign the rights away to that story, and that story would then go in a vault and never be heard from again. Yep. It was a way of silencing people who had dirt on Donald Trump, and there were lots and lots and lots of people who had really bad shit on Donald Trump.
Well, and
this
Karen McDougal has a huge lawsuit in her favor on the way, because her lawyer, the person that she thought was her lawyer, was actually working with Michael Cohen. And so, and Michael Cohen was working with the National Enquirer. So it's all a huge conspiracy against her to, and I do believe she won actually against the National Enquirer company. It was on the cover of Men's Health magazine as a result. I think that's how that worked out.
This is just the start.
Yeah.
This is just the start.
So Driftglass,
and this is,
we have a letter from a listener that I want to read to you. Yeah. Dear Blue Gal and Driftglass, I am counting the days till Friday when I get to hear what you and Driftglass have to say about Tuesday's shitstorm of glory.
Yeah,
I'm on vacation this week, so I really should be wanting the time to pass as slowly as possible. Meanwhile, I heard somewhere that the proliferation of liberal podcasts could be the answer to the right's domination of talk radio going forward. Do you have an opinion on that, and maybe address it on a future podcast? I think the answer is yes. I think.
Well,
right?
I will say that I'm going to give him the same answer that Hunter Thompson gave about the ibogaine rumor
that he invented.
Yeah, I started that rumor. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, podcasts are the wave of the future, my friend. And we were early adopters of podcasts.
We were.
We really
2010.
were.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why we have a national show, and we go from city to city.
No, we don't.
We don't do that.
No,
that's right.
No, we don't make millions of dollars. We don't have investors. No, I mean we have investors. We have our listeners who invest in our podcast.
We have really loyal, cool, funny, weird listeners,
and we love them.
Like what we do.
We love them like a family.
Like
we
crazy.
Absolutely do.
Yes, we do.
So on with the letter. So since there's supposed to be this proliferation of like-minded podcasts, I started looking around and found Pod Save America, which I kind of like. It seems to me like professional left light.
That's the when you read that to me, that's the part where I started laughing.
We started laughing so hard.
And scotch came out my nose, which is
don't let that
good.
happen.
No, but laugh.
They indulge in a bit of cussing, as we say here in the South, but are not as passionate as you and Driftglass. They are part of crooked media, and you work for Crooks and Liars, so I took that as a sign. Does their podcast have your approval? Well, they're still waiting for our approval, I'm sure. No, they're not. They are not associated with Crooks and Liars. And they're a big podcast. They're very popular and nationwide, and have been on the Colbert Show. I'm sorry, Late Night with Stephen Colbert. They're celebrities and former Obama administration people, and are donating. I would say they are using their time for a good cause at this point.
Yes, they are.
And are definitely comrades. I certainly consider them to be worthy of your time, and I have nothing bad to say about the content of their show at all.
No, well, I would, but that's nitpicking. Why pick nits?
No.
Why pick nits? Well, for example, one early show, they had friend of the pod, Chuck Todd.
Oh, no.
They had a lovely conversation with Chuck Todd. I'm like, he's sitting right there. Sweep the leg, sweep the leg. But they wouldn't
ask him the real questions that needed to be asked. Yeah.
And they do have, a number of them have people on who I would ask very different questions of, because if you're going to be a journalist, and they are taking the role of journalists, and good for them. If you have access to people that no one else can have access to, there are a number of questions that really, really need to be asked.
Right.
I mean, I'm not being facetious. I'm being dead serious. Yeah. And it bothers me sometimes when they don't do that. But by and large, they don't know we exist.
No,
so
that's
we're
true.
Not really
that's
a problem
true.
For them.
Right. We're small potatoes compared to. They have millions of listeners, and we have on a good week 10,000 listeners. So we're in the cornfield and small. And we every once in a while we get emails from people suggesting social media campaigns and different things we could do to increase our profile. And we're raising 2 teenagers and writing every day, and feel very much we're not airplane travelers, actually. And we have children at home, so things. Well,
for example, let me give you a real definite. For instance, if we were like real serious about being, there used to be a term that fell into disrepute called blog whoring.
Yes, right.
Blog whoring was a term invented by A-list bloggers to make B-list bloggers feel bad about promoting themselves. So once you have a very large audience, it's like we don't really want anybody else coming in the door. So being the little guy, being persistent and really pushing yourself and marketing yourself and calling attention to yourself relentlessly was like poo-pooed by people who started blogging in the mid 2000s. Would that be fair to say?
Yep.
But the truth is, if you would like a national audience, you have to really relentlessly promote yourself all the time. And so in October, in, I believe, California, in Los Angeles, California, Politicon is... And Politicon is a big old political trade show.
Yeah.
And there's a booth right here with Ann Coulter in it, and there's a booth right here with Malcolm Nance in it. And it is completely agnostic about your merits as a person. Mm-hmm. All of the worst people who are on the right, who are bloggers, who are writing terrible things at a national level will be there. James Carville will be there. People I like and admire will be there, but it's a trade show,
and it again gives truth to the belief that this is just a puppet show on cable news.
It's just
a show. We are
product.
Activists, and we are not a puppet show. We are not here to provide the liberal side of an argument. I think,
and I respect the fact that many people need to do that. That if Sam Stein would like to continue to get 2 minutes on MSNBC every month and promote his show, which is a very fine show, he has to carpet bag all over the place and be at these conventions. And I'd be happy to sit in on a blogger panel or sit in on a podcast panel or do anything like that as a local expert, as someone who's done podcasting. I know you would too, but making a life out of going from LA to New York to LA to New York to LA to New York.
We can't and have no interest in doing that.
I have no interest in doing that. And here's the thing that bugs me more than anything else. Blogging and podcasting are inherently geographic independent.
Right.
You do not have to be physically next to the person in the cubicle next to you. You prove this every day. You work with people who you've never met.
Right.
Face to face. You do a splendid job. It doesn't have to be this way.
Yep.
But because of the nature of the media market, if you're not proximate to power, you really don't exist. Yeah. And that's just the truth of it.
But Driftless, I also think that's your Asperger's talking to, because human beings, normal human beings, unlike us, are social creatures and like to reward their friends with attention. And you and I don't necessarily do that very well. So
that's true. What you're saying, Blue Gals, I'm talking out of my Asperger, which happens all the time.
Hey, Driftglass, we got another letter that I just love. It's an old letter. It's from earlier this year, but it wins the Don't Sugarcoat It award from
Roll it out, baby. Roll it out.
From my standpoint. Dear DGBG, I just wanted to take a moment to say just how profoundly thankful I am to have discovered your guys' podcast. You are truly one of the most refreshing and talented voices in politics that I listen to while I work. And as a truck driver, I have plenty of time to listen to podcasts. Being in Mike Bost's district and surrounded by so much crazy Uncle Liberty bullshit on a day-to-day basis, I can leave both my husband and I feeling hopeless on occasion. But listening to your good work each week talks us down from the edge and reminds us that we're not the only resistance out here in the cornfields. Recently, the DNC sent out a fundraising email offering a limited-time Blue Wave 2018 car magnet. I didn't feel like that really encapsulates my feelings going into the fall midterms. So to Vistaprint I went and threw together my own personal Brown Wave sticker and ordered extra to enclose along with this contribution. And it is an oval sticker that says, shit in the GOP's mouth, 11/6/2018.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. I want this fall to be an absolute shitstorm in the face of those who seek to take away my mother's health insurance. Amen to that.
Yes, absolutely. That last part, that is so important. It is not because we don't like the way they smell or the way they cut their hair. Or
it is policy based.
No, it's fucking policy, and it's the way they're willing to blow up democracy in order to put forth horrible policies. We fought a revolution in this country, and people died to improve the country, to make the country a better place. There are times when you do have to rise up, sometimes under force of arms, and change the country you're in.
And with a lack of civility. So let me finish this letter. I want this fall to be an absolute shitstorm in the face of those who seek to take away my mother's health insurance, to those who would seek to invalidate my marriage, and bully and alienate trans people and kids who are already in a vulnerable position growing up in a small rural community. To those who feel like our wages are too high and that the rich just need more tax cuts. I want this fall to matter, and I never, ever want to feel like I felt on November 9th, 2016.
Amen.
Thank you again so much for what you guys do. It really means the world to me and makes a difference. I hope this finds you well and can assist in helping your voices fight the good fight from here in the cornfields. That is from Michael in another part of Illinois, and we do appreciate you, Michael, and thank you.
We really do.
Love to your family.
I can't underscore enough how important it is to get out and register your friends, walk neighborhoods, knock doors, phone bank, postcards. You and I went to a little gathering.
Did. We went to a Blue Sweat. They called it the Blue Sweat training for Betsy Dirksen Londrigan, who is running for Congress here in the Illinois 13th District. It was much better attended than they were expecting.
Literally overflow crowds. People were out the door
on a Tuesday night, showing up at the headquarters of the Springfield headquarters, because she has headquarters all over the district. And it's a big district. It's a big gerrymandered district, gerrymandered to be a swing district for Democrats. They've included a lot of university. It runs from Champaign-Urbana, where the big University of Illinois is, all the way down to East St. Louis. So it's a big district. It includes Peoria. So it's a big geographic district. She's got a lot of room to cover. She was not there that night, but we did want to talk about what they said and how they feel that winning can happen, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It is a district that has gone from likely Republican to leaning Republican, which is only one step away from toss-up. And the difference that happens in those kind of districts is turnout. That's what it takes, is just turnout. So you have already gone door to door. I'm doing postcards for voters, and we're doing what we can to get the vote out. Now, one of the things that they emphasized over and over again is early voting. Early voting and voting by mail, if that's an option in your state. Voting by mail in Illinois gets counted first on election night.
Yes, it does.
Which is a plus for Junior Jude. Junior Jude's really going to like that. It is. Now, they kept saying this. I thought this was funny. They kept saying, every type of voting is easy. Every type of voting is secure. Voting by mail is the easiest and most secure way to vote, because they don't want to call into question the legitimacy of voting in any other way.
Don't even bother. Your vote won't count, man. Just stay home and cry.
Right.
Yeah, no.
They want you to vote no matter how you vote, but they are really pushing for voting by mail and early voting, because
they can bank that.
They can bank that, and they don't have to come for that vote on election night. The voting by mail is a new tradition that they're trying to set up. You know, people traditionally go with their families to vote, or they go after school, or they go and have a cookie at the voting booth. Which
it's a ritual. It's a ritual. It makes me feel good.
Yep.
You know,
but all kinds of things can get in the way of that ritual if you're only going on one day. The lines can be incredibly long. The weather can be bad. You could be sick. You could be, somehow in some other way inconvenienced, and having the time to sit at your kitchen table with other family members who also have their ballot in front of them, talk about the candidates, talk about the issues, cast your ballot and mail it in, can be a new tradition. Yeah. And it is a very secure, it's a paper ballot. and it's protected by the U.S. Postal Service and laws regarding mail fraud. So
postal
unions. And it is the new way to vote. It's the way that Democratic candidates want you to vote if it's available. And in some states like Oregon, that's the only way you vote now. Everybody votes by mail. So, but the trainers were young and earnest and excited, and it was good-natured, and boy, it was overflowing. It was standing room only, and
there were a lot of people there who came. There were a couple of people there who were in walkers. Mm-hmm. There were several senior citizens there. A broad cross, people who volunteer for other things that I know by face and by name from other good causes.
From all kinds of community organizations that you belong to. Yep.
It would have made you so happy to see these extremely diverse faces, all interested in doing one thing, getting this woman elected and making sure the Republicans are shoved out of power so hard that they never come back, and that we can get back to the business of governing,
right, and
stop having to fight this stupid war with these awful people over how fast we'll burn down the country.
Right. And I am hopeful in the sense that it's pretty clear to me that from this turnout, especially, that people associate their Republican congressman with the firewall between Trump and impeachment.
Yes.
Republicans in general do not associate voting for the Republican congressman as a vote for Donald Trump. In fact, Donald Trump ran against the Republican establishment over and over again in 2016.
He keeps doing it too.
And he keeps doing it.
I mean, he's pardon my language, he's pimp slapping Jeff Sessions all over Capitol Hill.
Right. And John McCain, and the dying John McCain, who's in hospice now. You know, well, we would have defeated Obamacare altogether if it weren't for John McCain. Yeah, my health care hung on John McCain's thumb that night, and I will never forget that. Terror, that was terrorism against me and my family.
It was,
and a lot of people's. I mean, the horror. That was a horrible night. Election night was a horrible night, and that was a horrible night that is burned in my memory.
And the health care thing and the impeachment thing. And here's how I want to pair those two, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
Donald Trump, during his campaign, swore up and down that we'd have great health care, cost pennies, a fraction of the cost, cover everyone, blah, blah, blah. Never going to touch Medicare, never going to touch Medicaid. Nothing will be touched. Everything will be great because Obamacare is a disaster. It's a disaster. So I'm going to do great things. It'll be great. Everyone will be covered. Everyone knew he was lying. Mm-hmm. Every single person involved in the world knew that he didn't mean a fucking word. He had no idea what he was talking about. He was making shit up. Whatever the crowd wanted to hear was what he was going to say, and that all of his base were either too stupid to know otherwise, or didn't care, or believed him. But anybody with half a brain knew he didn't mean a fucking word of it. And that's how you roll in the Republican Party. I can say whatever the fuck I want and smirk because I know I'm lying. You know I'm lying. But the fucking morons who vote for me, they're dumb enough to believe this shit. And that's how I keep getting elected.
Right.
Now, take that back to 1998. Republicans were full of pious language about how the good of the country depended on holding presidents to the highest possible standards. How everything about the presidency, the honor and dignity of the office must be preserved. And just because the president had a blowjob and lied about it, well, that's sufficient grounds, Blue Gal. I don't want to do it, but the troops depend on it. God himself has asked me to do this. We cannot let this cup pass from our lips.
Yep.
That was the pious language of the Republican Party as they impeached Bill Clinton for what would be considered a rounding error in the crimes committed every week by Donald Trump. And those same Republicans are looking the other way, hiding their heads, not saying a fucking word, because they never meant a word of it. They're not patriots. They do not love this country. They do not give a shit about you or me. They are liars and crooks and scumbags and racists. And they always have been, and they always will be. And they say these lies knowing that Chuck Todd's never going to call them on it.
Yep.
No one's going to push back on it. And the morons who vote for them believe it or are willing to accept it as the price of getting their guy elected and making the libtards cry.
That's right.
But every single thing Republicans say about what they're going to do, about the nobility of their motives, it's all 20 years of history has shown it's all a lie. All of it. up until today, up until this very day, everything they say is, and it's finally caught up with them. It used to be you could lie in 1998, 97, and not have to pay a price for it until, George Bush lies in the wrong war.
Right.
You'd wait a few years. The turnaround time on their lies just falling apart completely is now 24 hours, 10 hours, 5 hours, 5 minutes, one paragraph.
Yep.
And now that aperture, that cycle has gone down to zero. And once it starts hitting zero, once people start laughing at Donald Trump as he is talking, that's when they know they're
time's up. Steven Tyler told Trump to stop using his music. That's fascinating. And we're running out of time. I did want to mention Newt Gingrich saying that the slain Iowa student could help GOP in the midterms. And Wonkette responded by saying Trump and his deplorables should keep Molly Tibbetts' name out of their racist fucking mouths. And that is the truth. And I want you to take the last moments of our show to talk about Susan Collins saying the magic words, please.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Susan Collins said the magic words. And the magic words are that I talked to
Brett Kavanaugh,
Mr. Kavanaugh, and he thinks Roe versus Wade is a settled law. I don't believe he believes that. I don't believe she believes he believes that. But there's a magic spell that this is their patronum spell. This is their deflecto patronum. This is the magic words that they can utter that will deflect all criticism from them. So Susan Collins is a Republican. The idea that she's ever going to be anything other than a Republican is a joke. The idea that she's ever done anything other than hedge, and I don't know, maybe this, and occasionally come down on the side of women, but almost always vote to screw women in this country is an illusion. So Susan Collins sat with Brett Kavanaugh and said, well, he told me that he'll be nice to me and I'm pretty. And so I'll and that means he's got her vote. Here's the problem. He is probably going to be the next Supreme Court justice.
In spite of everything.
In spite of everything. He has been appointed by a person who is probably going to be have at least 1 or 2 or 3 cases against him heard by that Supreme Court. Because eventually some of the shit he did is going to land in their lap one way or another. And he is appointing his own judges now and he's picking them. He clearly picked Brett Kavanaugh on the basis of the fact that Brett Kavanaugh once said that, presidents are above the law.
Right.
They shouldn't have to be subject to these sorts of things. So the fix is in.
Yeah.
And it is, so give up on pretending that there's anyone inside the Republican Party.
Well, it's evil Spock. It's evil Spock. Yeah, I know we've only got 240 years. Those 240 years are going to be dominated by conservative Supreme Court justices screwing everything because we'll have the power and you won't.
It's never going to get any better. I mean, that's the case I would make to Ben Sass if he were listening to me or Susan Collins. When do you think your party's going to stop being evil? You put up with it. You put up with it. You get elected because you want tax cuts. Let's face it, that's what you want. But when do you think your party's going to stop being evil? Is it going to be next year or the year after that? Because it's been 30 years now. They've only gotten worse. So maybe the problem is not that we're waiting for the fever to break. We're waiting for the corn to be churned. Maybe the problem. I mean, Ben Sass today, I think it was tweeting that we need a lot more Americans to be aware of this whole thing with Putin trying to pit us against each other. And I wrote a little post saying, Republican senator wishes Americans would step up and do something about all this nonsense.
Right.
Dude, you're a fucking senator.
Why can't we all get along and not go against each other like Putin wants us to?
You're a senator.
One party invited Vladimir Putin to their convention, invited the ambassador to their convention, and had the campaign manager working for free and offering jobs and offering planks in the platform to Putin. That's what happened. Yeah. And anyone who thinks that Paul Manafort is loyal to Trump, no. He's worried what's going to happen to him if he crosses Putin. That's why he's being silent.
Yes, that's exactly right. He's really, because he knows the worst that's going to happen to him in this country with our justice system is he'll go to jail.
Go to jail for life. Yeah.
Near the worst that's going to happen to him if he crosses.
No, or his family. Yeah, no. And I'm not threatening anybody. I'm saying these guys put polonium in, places where there are civilians just walking around. And
our people, the Manaforts of the world and the Cohens of the world and Trumps of the world got into bed with them
Yep.
They jumped into bed with the Russian mob, with the worst people you can imagine. They did. We
are not going to tell the story of the snake. We're not going to do it. Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an internet kitty sent in by you, the listeners, except when we post an internet dog. And this week we are posting Butch. And I chose Butch this week because he's just a solid, basic dog, good dog. And that's what we need this week.
That's right.
Butch is part, and I'm going to assassinate this word. It's solo. It's so I can't. It's solo. It's solo.
It's part generic drugs that you see advertised on.
No, it's a hairless Mexican dog, and for short, it's solo.
It's part Zoloft, and then it ends with a word you can't say, and not on the
Xoloitzcuintli. That's how you say it. Sure. And that's a hairless Mexican dog, and he's also part mutt. And he's pure and simple, a great dog. He's going to be living in a house with 8 cats, and you just know he's going to get along just fine because he's easy. You know, he's Butch. He's Butch, and he's going to be fine. You should go visit Butch at our Facebook page and website. You can send your internet kitty dog, whatever, to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com. Please put internet kitty in your subject line. And you can also write to both of us at that email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to write us. We do love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our job. Approximately 1% of our listeners support this podcast with a contribution, and you can too. See our website, proleftpod.com, for details. Our PayPal postal address information is there at proleftpod.com. Please share our show on Facebook or Twitter, and thank you for doing that. Hey, Drift Class, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Oh, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties are never going to get enough pecker jokes.
Let's think about living. Let's think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the bopping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the whine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2018, DGBG Productions Incorporated.